Hello, Gen Genies. It's me, Julie.
And Rich.
Before we get started today, we want to let you in on some exciting news. We have launched our new Patreon page for the podcast.
Woohoo! We are super excited about this new chapter for CutOff Jeans.
So, Patreon is a website where listeners like you can pledge a small monthly amount. We're talking only $5 or $10, guys, to support the podcast and help defray the cost of bringing you the show each week.
To be clear, CutOff Jeans will continue to be absolutely free. But to thank you for your support, we are going to offer our patrons some fun little extras.
Like early access to the podcast every week, where you'll get to hear the latest episode before it's released to the general public.
And why not make your friends jealous with exclusive patron-only CutOff Jeans swag?
Fancy. And here's something you guys have been asking for, and I'm really looking forward to this. I'm going to host a monthly, hour-long, online Ask Me Anything session where patrons at the $10 level can literally ask me anything.
Anything? You're a brave woman, Julie.
You know, I know. I'm also going to give access to my blog, Are You My Father?, where I tell the story of my search, actually it's my life story basically, for my biological father in even more detail than I did on the podcast.
Wow, your blog was the original inspiration for CutOff Jeans, wasn't it?
It was.
Wow. Well, all patrons at any level will receive a shout-out on the podcast along with our undying gratitude for your support.
Yep. You guys know that this show is a labor of love for me. It's something I'm very passionate about. It'd mean so much to me if you would consider supporting our work here on the podcast by going to patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
That's Patreon, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans podcast.
We'll add a link to it on the podcast and on the Facebook page. Thank you all, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Woo!
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip hip hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Jeans.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, and I am a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the producer and co-host of your podcast.
Your podcast.
Your podcast, listeners. It's not mine.
I am your Miss America.
I don't know what that means.
That's in the Miss America pageant. They would, like when the states announced themselves,
Yes.
This used to be this way. It's very different now. But they would, no, they still do it. I lied. They would go up and say, la, 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 and say a little something about themselves and say, I'm Julie Dixon Jackson, you're Miss California.
You're Miss California.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe it means like if you say it that way, it makes people feel more invested in it.
Yeah,
Right?
I guess. It's weird. It's weird.
It is strange.
Pageants are weird.
Pageants are, and you were a pageant girl when I met you.
Yeah, I was.
So.
Yeah. I watched the Miss America pageant recently. Did
Did
talk
you
about
really?
that?
No.
It just was on randomly. I didn't even know it was on, and I came across it and was thrilled, but it left me empty.
Why? Did they not have a swimsuit competition?
They didn't. They didn't have a swimsuit competition, and now they don't have an evening gown competition either.
They still have talent, don't they?
Yes.
All right.
If that's what you can call it. Oh, snap. There, you know what? As always, the top 10 has some great talent and some not so great talent. It's a mixed bag.
Right.
And it is what it is. But what it is now, which is really what it's always been but with more bells and whistles, is a job interview. It's all about what their platform issue is, their social issue.
Sure.
And they do a presentation about what they want their reign to be about and what they want to advocate for.
Well, I kind of like that.
I do too, but then don't call it Miss America anymore. I think that's
Miss Social Justice.
yeah, something like that. I mean, these are brilliant women.
Right.
Just the fact that they can do that. And they're all, the fact that they can talk, they're never at a loss for words.
Like you were just now when you were trying to talk about
Exactly. They are not me. And this, my friends, is why I was Miss Congeniality. Anywho.
Oh, I thought you were misunderstood.
Misdemeanor.
I do remember though watching it when I was a kid one time, and and I'm a pianist, and there was a woman who was up for Miss America, and she played Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu, which, believe you me, not an easy
right.
Tune to play. I mean, and she was brilliant. And
There are some that are brilliant and some that are not, but they're put in the same exact category.
But I remember thinking, like, what are you doing trying to be Miss America? Like, you're a
scholarships,
concert pianist.
Scholarships.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And that is really why I still somewhat support the Miss America pageant, because they are the largest provider of scholarships to women in the country.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's true. It's true, you know. That's why I did it. Miss Congeniality. I'll just say that one more time.
How much did you get for that?
I think $1,000.
Oh, hey, there you go. You know, some girls are congenial and they don't get anything, so you should be happy.
It paid off. It really paid off. My niceness paid off. Yeah. Okay. Hey, what's going on?
Well, I have some good news.
Ooh, do tell.
So, you know, the show that I've been writing forever, and you did. Julie sang a lot of the demos for me.
I sang the entire show, everybody.
She played every role. She was the entire chorus at one point. But anyway, it has. I've been sitting on this for a little bit, and I'm really happy to announce that my new musical called Love Stings that I wrote with Matthew Levine is going to be produced this summer at Northern Sky Theater in Wisconsin.
Woohoo!
Yes.
That is so exciting.
I am thrilled. I had a show 3 years ago at this theater. The show was called Oklahoma in Wisconsin, and they did a great job. And it was one of the most creative times of my life working with them.
Yeah.
And so I'm thrilled to go back in May and rehearse with them and really, you know, just get in and make this show great. So
how exciting.
It's the world premiere. They're doing, this is the only show that they're doing that's the world premiere. They're doing some shows that are in their canon that they've done before, but this is the new one.
That's exciting. Do you get to be involved in the casting?
I already am.
Ooh. Yes. Do you get to go to the auditions?
Well, I mean,
or
I've seen some of them online, you know, because
people audition by video now.
Yeah, and they have like
I sound like such an old woman.
They have a certain team, like because it's a summer stock company. Like people go up there for the summer.
So do they go to New York and do?
No, they do not. I think most of the actors are from Chicago and Milwaukee in that area. Anyway, I'm really excited about the show. Again, it's called Love Stings, and it takes place on a 1960s bee farm. And it's going to be
as you do.
Yes, it's actually an adaptation of a P.G. Wodehouse story from 1915 that I've updated. It's fun for the whole family. It's going to be a great musical comedy, I hope. And so, if any of the listeners, if we have any in the Midwest, and you're in Door County, Wisconsin,
or
this
if
summer,
you want to get on a plane and fly,
it's actually a beautiful, beautiful town.
Is it?
And it plays in an outdoor amphitheater in the middle of a state park. It is stunningly beautiful.
Oh, it sounds gorgeous.
At night, it's just gorgeous. There's trees all around, and a huge theater. It's 650 people, and it's going to run from June 10th through August 29th.
That's a long run for summer stock.
Yes. Well, it runs alongside like two other shows.
In Rep, right?
In Rep, yeah. But it runs every week. I think it'll run 3 or 4 times a week.
Oh, that's great.
So
congratulations.
So thank you so much.
I'm very happy for you.
Moving on.
All right. In genetic genealogy news.
Yes.
Which is why we're here after all.
Oh, I thought it was to talk
about
my
musicals.
Show.
Yeah, that too. Apparently, I think people like that.
We're going to have to write the DNA musical. You know that, Julie, at some point, right? Got to do it.
Well, of course, it'll be called "The Truth Is in Your Genes." Duh. So on December 9th, Verigen, a California-based forensic genomics company, acquired GEDmatch.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a user-sourced DNA genealogy site. We all know GEDmatch. The acquisition suggests that GEDmatch's transformation from a popular genealogy site to a crime-fighting tool is almost complete. The privacy implications will be enormous, even for those who have never considered taking a consumer genetic test.
Wow.
Maybe. I mean, nobody knows, really.
But you still have to upload your stuff from, say, Ancestry to GEDmatch in order for them to use that.
They're not testing. Exactly. More recently, GEDmatch has acquired a second use, solving crimes, as we all know. And most Americans first learned about GEDmatch in 2018 after law enforcement announced that they had used it to identify the suspected Golden State Killer.
Right.
So yeah, that's big.
That is big.
That is
And we've
big.
talked about this on the podcast and the ethical implications and whether you had to opt out or opt in and all that stuff, right?
Right. And now it got changed when there was an uproar about it. It got changed to everybody was automatically opted out unless they went back and opted in, which
Right.
is a big problem for the
Crime fighting.
community because the database is way smaller.
Right.
than
I
it
think
was
I saw a quote from CeCe Moore about that in
Yes.
a news story, and it wasn't even related to the podcast. Like I just happened to see it because it was big news.
Yeah. She's everywhere. So according to Colleen Fitzpatrick, a forensic genealogical consultant and founder of Identifinders International and the DNA Doe Project, very important, the acquisition of GEDmatch was met with alarm, suspicion, and hope within the genealogical community. That pretty much says it all.
That's quite a spectrum.
Yeah, because we have people with all different feelings about it.
Yeah, different reasons to go to
Exactly.
GEDmatch. Yes,
Exactly. She says we have experienced so many upheavals in recent months that many members of the community are nervous about the future of GEDmatch and genetic genealogy in general. Yet we all hope things will stabilize and we can continue to use GEDmatch without further disruptions in service.
You never know.
Right.
You know, when a new company takes over, you just never know.
Well, yeah. And so speaking of that, the Verigen CEO, Brett Williams, told Forensic that is exactly what he plans to do. The main difference will be the Verigen name and the company behind GEDmatch. So go forward, we're going to invest in the site, make the front end more attractive and consumer friendly, which is kind of a big deal. We will also improve the tools available to the genealogy community. We want to be able to manage within the terms of use. And that is the key. As this acquisition plays out, the terms of use will become infinitely important for all stakeholders.
Yes, and what they do to change the terms of use.
Exactly. Exactly.
We'll have to follow this one.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was another pre-Christmas announcement that we've been sitting on.
We're still catching up.
We are catching up. We have a lot of catching up to do. So a couple of weeks ago, the interview I had over the holidays, or we had over the holidays, was Deborah Cohn, my biological mother, who was one of my first mothers that I reached out to once I started working for another company.
Yes.
And she agreed to have a conversation with me, which was lovely, and it was so good. And thank you for the feedback, everybody. She really
Everybody
had a good
really
time.
liked her, yeah.
Yes. And I will be talking to Jonathan, her son, very soon.
Oh, wow.
Yes, for his perspective. So there was one part that I edited out, and I opted to do that just because it was a freestanding episode, and I couldn't talk about it. And I really wanted to. I think it needs to have a discussion.
Okay.
So when I asked her about how her other children are getting along with Jonathan, her response was something like, I haven't heard from my children in months.
Oh.
Which was shocking to me because, and actually alarming because that's one of the reasons a lot of biological mothers resist connecting, because they are worried about what their other children are going to do. And in the majority of cases, in my experience, the other children are the least of their worries. They're usually thrilled that they have another sibling and don't hold anything against their mother. And I asked her, I said, is that because of this? And she said, I think that might have something to do with it. But I do get the sense that there was something else as well, that there was possibly something brewing beforehand. But yeah, it makes me... it kind of gave me pause as to how to play this. And I said, do you want me to air that? And she said, you know what? I'm on the side of truth.
Well, good for her.
Yeah. I appreciate that. So that's I ultimately ended up editing it out, but I did want to talk about it.
That's why you're bringing it up now, because she said she wanted to err on the side of truth. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. But I was afraid about putting that out there, that's a thing, because it normally isn't.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't be afraid of it because they're the whole human experience. I mean, people are going to have different reactions based on who you are. You know, even for me, taking this DNA test, right? I mean, I haven't gotten results back yet, but I mean, I've always had that thought. I think I mentioned it on the podcast. I wondered if my dad might have fathered some children, because when he was young, he dated a lot, and who knows? Who knows? Or even after my parents divorced, my dad was still a young, good-looking guy by the time they divorced. I guess they divorced when I was 3 or 4 years old. So who knows what I might find? And I don't know how I'll feel if I find that information out, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's the truth, so I'll accept whatever it is. But, you know, I guess the hardest part is that because my dad is no longer with us, I'm not able to discuss it with him and say, did you know about it? Or, you know,
well, and that's something you'll never know at this
no,
point.
and this is all conjecture anyway because I don't have any results. But, you know, as I play it out in my head, sure, you know, it's one of those things. Will this make me think differently of my father?
Interesting.
Than I did before.
Yeah.
So I get it.
And also, it takes time to process. I have a lot of times I'll reach out to someone and they're like, just the other day I reached out to the nephew of the probable biological father of my client. And he was I find that I tend to reach out to younger people on Facebook because they are more likely to check their messages.
Yes.
First off, and they're also more accepting.
Yeah, because they live their lives online. There's no secrets.
Yes, exactly, precisely.
Everything's out there, and what they have for dinner, and whether they have any adoptee children in their family or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I laid it on him, and he's the one who took the DNA test, so I couldn't be too surprising. But I explained the whole thing to him, and he said, well, you know, and it's his grandfather is basically, so my client is his half-aunt. And he was very accepting. He went and woke up his fiance when I told him about it. But he said he would talk to his dad and get back to me about it, which, you know, and then I was able to talk to my client saying, I just had a great conversation, you know, we'll hear back from him. Then she called me the next day and she's like, did you hear back? And I had to tell her this is the time that they take to process.
Sure.
And I totally get wanting to hear back right away. But this is when patience comes into play because people have different time clocks of how they're going to process it. And just like I was talking before about the father that contacted me before Christmas, that I hadn't heard from them for months. I thought for sure they were going to ignore it.
But yeah, people take different amounts of time. I don't know. I don't know what I'll do. You know, and even as I'm saying this, I'm thinking, look at me. I've already, you know, convicted my dad of having other children or something. But you know, who knows? The thing about the surprise of maybe my mother had a child, you know, I don't know. I don't know. My mother was married
Isn't it interesting how that would be more scandalous?
Well, yeah.
But also because here's the thing, and here's the double standard here. Women can't pretend they didn't know.
Right.
And whereas men are lucky enough to where they can say, oh my gosh, I had no idea. It was I don't even know who that was. I don't.
Right.
Even if it's not true.
Right.
They have that luxury.
Exactly. And isn't it funny, though, that this is where I'm going with this DNA test? And I couldn't care less about, like, my percentage of, like, how much English, German, French, whatever it may be that's in me. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Although it might be interesting.
I'm sure it will be.
I wonder how much Ashkenazi you have.
Oh, I don't know.
See?
This is the kind of stuff, though, that I do wish my mom was alive to see because she was so fascinated by her family tree and genealogy, you know, and finding out the record at Ellis Island when her grandfather came over and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's fun.
So yeah,
for me.
So you know, I mean, she loved that stuff.
Well, that's good. She would be into this.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. So, but I don't think she could have anticipated even that everybody could just do it with a kit that you buy at Christmas.
Right. Yeah. So. My dad had agreed to do a DNA test a couple months before he passed away, or before he had his stroke, because he was into it. He loved science,
right?
And he was like, "All right, sure, let's see what happens," because it would have helped me so much with his genealogy because I work on their tree. Unfortunately, we never got to do it, so I'm sad about that.
Well, I'll let you guys know when my test results come back, the DNA tests.
I can't wait.
Me neither.
I'm very excited.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review, or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Jeans Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
All right, we're back. I have another From the Trenches extravaganza. So this here's a word of advice. Please, I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. Please don't tell your adoption story on your Ancestry bio. Or, for instance, under your name, don't say Julie Dixon born as Katrina Ellen Price, because that's kind of a dead giveaway. And I totally get it that people, I did it myself, when they first reach out to DNA matches, they give away the farm.
Too much information at
Yes.
first. Yeah.
Okay, the reason they're doing it is because they might know of a relative that gave up a child. Let me put the kibosh on that. Nobody knows of a relative that gave up a child. It's a secret. Mm-hmm. It's especially a relative that matches, that's like beyond a first cousin. Right. And even if they do, they're more likely than not to kind of shut it down and not want to be involved, not open a can of worms. So my sweet client that I'm working with right now has a very complicated case, and he has tons and tons of second cousins. And he already knows who his mother was, but I cannot... there are like 7 different genetic lines that I cannot connect to each other, which gives me pause and is telling me that might be more than one NPE up there in the line. So it's giving me agita, and I've spent the last 48 hours trying to break this thing, and it's driving me crazy. And I look at he's made notes on all his DNA matches that say message then. He has messaged all of his DNA matches, and none have gotten back to him.
Oh my God, what are the odds?
Yeah. So they didn't read it, which is very common, don't know what he's talking about, or read it and went, whoa, I want nothing to do with this, because he gave them too much information.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the key, guys, is you don't want to lie. You don't want to be misleading, but it's okay to be vague.
Yeah, I get that.
I've told. So usually when I contact people, I say, hey, you a match at about a second cousin to my friend so-and-so. Would you care to collaborate and see if we can figure out how you connect? And at that point, I can say, can you just tell me who your grandparents were?
Right.
You know what? If people can tell me just who all 4 of their grandparents were and their approximate birth dates and locations, that's really all I need. I can take it from there.
But if you cloud that with like, okay, so I've got this client, I'm looking for this, and he really needs to find his birth parents. And, like, that's a lot of information to process before. And then why are you asking me this question? So
people get yes. There were I posted something on Facebook the other day of the message that I got. I have been messaging this one family, several members of this one family. It's weird because I had just messaged this same person on Facebook and friend requested her. When I friend request, then I put a message that says, I know you don't know me. Are you so-and-so who did a DNA test?
Sure.
So I'd written to her and I explained more of the situation, because since I wrote to her 2 months ago on Ancestry, I've since discovered exactly who everybody is. But I still have one question for the family, and I need for somebody to answer it for me, and that would help me to confirm something. So I sent her this message, then I went back onto Ancestry and I had a new message. And lo and behold, it was from that same woman, and I know for a fact she had not seen my Facebook message.
Because it tells you if it's been read.
Exactly. Yeah. And so it was just we were having a mind meld or something. But the message said, my mother was, and then it cut off. Oh.
That's like in an Agatha Christie
it's
movie.
So cruel.
Where it's like, and the killer was, and then someone
cruel.
stabs them in the back.
I posted a picture. Exactly. I posted a picture on Facebook and said, and in other news, I just got this.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a little aside. But often I will get responses months later. I've been getting a lot lately that I wrote 2 years ago saying, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't see this. How can I help you? La, la, la. I'm like, never mind, it's solved. But thanks.
Well, I mean, at least it was solved.
Right. I am finding more and more that as long as I use my detective skills, I usually don't have to talk to people anymore.
Wow, really?
Sometimes I do, and it helps. But a lot of the times, I'm pretty good at deducing things.
But also, like, people can lie, and the DNA doesn't.
Exactly. So it's better to, hone my research skills and do a little detective work, AKA stalking. And more often than not, I don't talk to people anymore.
Are you talking to me?
How do you feel about that? Yeah.
I just feel like she's gleaning all my DNA knowledge right now without saying a word.
Yes, I'm sucking it from you. I'm by osmosis.
She's like some kind of DNA succubus.
I'm a DNA succubus.
No, you're not.
Maybe we should name one of our
Patreon tiers.
One of our Patreon tiers, the DNA succubus.
Gen Genie succubus.
Succubus. Maybe we should just name them words that we
That'll
like.
make people sign up.
You know what? It's amazing what will motivate people.
You know?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, sure. So that is my From the Trenches story today. Remember when I was talking about funny names I found in doing genealogy, especially in the... nobody has glommed onto that. I was hoping a lot of people would say, well, I found this. Not so much. I'm not getting them, but I am still finding some great names.
So even though our listeners aren't really interested, we're going to tell you some more.
I'm playing anyway. So the same case, the one that I was just talking about that is bananas.
Okay.
First of all, every single line has a George Washington something. Remember, I used to think that was the funniest thing ever?
Yes.
That they had people named after presidents. Apparently, everybody had a George Washington in their family back then. Everybody.
George Washington Carver.
Precisely.
There you go.
Yes. So they had a bunch of them. And also last night, I was researching this family, and their last name is Oney, Oney. And I saw a marriage for one, and this guy married a lady named Lois Money. And so now her name is Lois Money Oney. Come on.
I thought it was really oney, and he married a twoey.
Maybe it was that. Maybe it's Money Oney.
It was Lawrence Welk. It was a oney and a twoey.
Oh, gosh. You know, my brother-in-law's grandfather used to be in the Lawrence Welk band orchestra.
Really?
And he just the other day posted a video, an old video of him. There was apparently something that, like, they got a segment, and he's like, "Hey, everybody, I think his name was Mike Bonet, and I pulled the short straw, so I have to talk today." And he announced something, and it was so fun to watch.
Wow.
But I've talked about Mike before. We found out that after his DNA came back, that he is a high percentage Chinese. And it comes from this grandfather. And looking at him now, you're like, oh, I see it.
Really?
But nobody ever thought that.
No.
And his name was Bonnet. They were French-Canadian.
Right.
But, yeah.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, my mom was named Irene Castle, and she's a pianist, and people used to think she was Joanne Castle, or related to Joanne Castle, who used to play piano, apparently, on the Lawrence Welk show.
Oh,
yeah,
the Castles.
The Castles.
Yeah,
I mean, there was an Irene and Vernon Castle that were I think they were brother and sister dancers back in the 20s, 30s.
What was it called? The Castle Walk. They did
that I don't know.
Me and my midday movies.
Yeah,
yes,
right?
There was a movie about them, and they invented the Castle.
Yeah, there's
Walk.
a movie called The Story of Vernon and Irene Castle, but this was Joanne Castle who played on the Lawrence Welk show, and is of no relation. But then again, I haven't got my DNA results, so who knows?
Was Castle your mother's real name?
No.
Oh.
So there's no way.
Never mind.
That was one of her names.
Yeah. Our names are all made up as well.
Well, she was married a couple times, and she was a performer, and so there were lots of names.
Yeah.
I told you I used to call that when I was upset with my mother, or I wanted to make her laugh, really, I would call her by all of her last names in order.
Fun. That's enjoyable.
And I'm not going to go through them now, just for privacy.
For privacy. Yeah,
but
that's enjoyable.
It was a long list.
Sure. So I've talked a lot about, as adoptees, our experience going to the doctor's office.
Yes.
And having to fill out all your
family history.
Yeah. And it's always like a big X through mine says adopted. Well, not anymore, but
yes, at one time you did.
Yes, and it made for a much shorter doctor visit.
You used to just write crapshoot.
Exactly. I draw some dice, and
could be anything. I might have some of these things, and I might not.
And I might not. So yeah, that's the adoptee experience. But now, as there are more and more NPEs or MPEs out there, misattributed parentage events, not parent expected, Somebody posted the other day about, has anybody had a conversation like this lately at their annual physical? Doctor, so your father died of diabetes, your paternal grandfather died from ... And he said, well, things have changed. Newfound father died of COPD, his father died of lung cancer, and half by a brother a brain tumor.
So, yeah.
Yeah, now they have to change what was in there. And the doctor's like, well, okay, what now?
Especially when you say somebody died of something. It's like, well, oh, no, but now I found out my
Right.
real father died
Yes.
of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had my annual physical recently, and I always start it with, I'm adopted. And she's like, oh, okay. But now I can say, but, I know them. And so I started, now I can say what my father's
You can fill in
family
some of
had
that
and all
history, yeah.
But she said, oh, but that's not so that's your adopted. I'm like, no, that's my real father.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, okay.
And she wants to hear the story, and you just direct her to the podcast.
Yes, exactly.
And to the Patreon page because
she
she's a
only
doctor.
Yes, and she only had 5 minutes with me because that's the way it works over there. But yeah, I thought that was fun.
That is fun.
That is.
So listen, shall we take a break?
Let's do it.
Thank you for listening to CutOff Genes with Julie Dixon-Jackson and Richard Castle. You can support us by going to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast. Now, back to the program.
Okay, it's story time.
Oh, good. This is the part 2 of our New England, my fellow New Englander.
Indeed, Sherry Bale. Oh, I tried to do that with New England accent.
It said in New York.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite New England.
Whatever.
Part 2.
You're so judgy. So, yes, part 2. When we left off, Sherry was talking about she had one paternal DNA cousin, or who she thought was a paternal DNA cousin, that she asked to test. And here's what happened.
And I went to my one living paternal cousin from my dad's side, who I was fairly close with, but we really didn't see all that many of the cousins on my dad's side, so I didn't have a lot of people to select from. And I said, hey, would you mind doing this? I'm trying to figure out who's the mother's side and who's the father's side so I can figure out this mess. And she said, oh, I'm really sorry, but I don't trust the government at all.
Lord.
And I can't have my DNA out there. And I said, well, okay, that's fine, whatever. If I can figure out my mother's side, I'll probably be able to, unravel some of the other stuff. So my cousins tested, and they came up nicely as my mother's cousins on my mother's mother's side, and that actually allowed me to figure out my mother's father's side.
Okay.
So I found this Irish crew, but damn, there were no anywhere. And I thought this was a little kind of funny because my mother and my father were cousins.
Oh.
They were cousins by marriage. So 2 of my mother's brothers married 2 of my father's mother's sisters.
Gotcha. So there were double cousins up than the generation before them, something like that.
The generation before. But my mother and father were from 2 of those lines, but they weren't actually.
Right. They weren't blood related.
Right. They weren't part of the married group. They were siblings of the married, that generation up. Anyway, they didn't have blood relationship. But I had cousins who were supposed to be related to me on both sides. I figured somebody was going to come up that was going to allow me to figure this out. It didn't.
Or somebody would be abnormally high, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And nobody, the third cousins were third cousins. They were all within that range.
Right. Whereas normally they would probably match as a second cousin.
A second cousin. They should have matched higher.
Okay.
So at this point, it's like, okay, now my dad isn't my dad. He can't be my dad. I don't have a single solitary in this mess.
Yeah,
and
surely on Ancestry, one would come up.
So I did 23andMe.
Okay.
No, I found more maternal cousins. No Steinmans, which is my father's mother's side at all.
Huh.
Driving me crazy. So I'm thinking, I bet you it's the doctor. It's got to be the doctor.
You just jumped to that?
No, because it was in the back of my mind, and I didn't realize how much it was in the back of my mind all the time. Because when I finally did figure it out, and I went into the living room, and I said to my husband, it was Dr. K. And he said, of course it was. You told me that 20 years ago.
Oh, how funny.
So
So you had
at some
suspected
point,
it, yeah.
yeah, this had surfaced somewhere in my brain enough to have said something to him,
Okay.
to my husband about it. But, I figured it would come up somehow if there was got to be somebody there, right? Who was going to be my father. And so one day I'm poking around on Ancestry, just, I finally learned how to do some research and stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm going to check him. Why not?
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and I said, oh, Dr. Klein, blah, blah, blah. And then, oh, look, here he is. And look, there's this family that's, he's in a pedigree. So I click on that family tree and I poke it around, and holy crap, the woman who runs that family tree is somebody, and she has a very strange, I won't use it, but she has a very strange code for her name, not a real name. And I said, I saw that before.
In your
That person was in the cousin list.
Yes.
And I went to her, and I went to him, and she was my third cousin, and it fit perfectly.
Wow.
And once that happened, yeah, it was crazy. And
that's a real
when I ran
eureka
into the
moment.
living room.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay.
And I ran into the living room and I said, it was Dr. K.
Oh.
And so I contacted her, and she said, oh, yeah, that must be, if that's the case, we're third cousins, and we're a generation off. We're the same age, but we're a generation off because Dr. K was 27 years older than my mom.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So does that make her a second cousin once removed?
Wait a minute. She was a second cousin once removed.
Yeah.
Actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
And she would match around a third cousin, right?
Yeah. So she said, there's somebody in the family who's kept a really good family, who developed a family tree about 5-10 years ago. Why don't you contact him? Maybe he'll share that with you, and you can resolve the rest of this mess. And I said, okay. So I contacted him, and he said, oh, this is all very interesting. He sends me a 1,200-line Excel file.
Wow.
And it turns out that my biological father was one of 6 different branches of that family that came over from Hungary, Jewish. That's why I couldn't tell the difference between my BCF and my BF.
Right.
They came over from Germany in the late 1800s, from Hungary in the late 1800s. There were 6 branches of this family. So I started looking at the cousin matches that I had, and I had something like 24 cousin matches.
Wow.
That were in his Excel file that came up on either 23andMe or on Ancestry. And I really did a job on his pedigree. I gave him like 2 more generations worth of data. And it's been just fascinating. The family is like lousy with physicians. There's a gene to become a doctor.
There's a sentence I never thought I would hear.
Yeah. But there's clearly, it's so bizarre. And so this first cousin that I matched with was a laboratory geneticist. And it's just weird. It's weird. So anyway, that's where we are. And I have the closest person I've made contact with is first cousin once removed.
Okay.
And his dad, the first cousin, but the first cousin once removed actually did his DNA. So that was kind of interesting.
Gotcha.
So that's where it is. I mean, I made a phone call to Dr. K's son and found out that he had passed away a year and a half previous, and I talked to his wife, which was kind of nice, and heard her story about her husband, and I met by phone his kids. So they're like, that would be my half brother, except only a social half brother,
right?
Because he was adopted,
right? So how do you think this happened?
So that's why I talked about in the beginning. So it was 1948, 1949 when the first regulations or recommendations started to come out about donor insemination. And physicians were using medical residents and other doctors in their facilities at the time as donors. And so the recommendations were that you should, A, never let the woman know who was the donor. There was absolute anonymity for the donor. And B, the general policy, and I think probably, this is also in Danny Shapiro's book and stuff, the general policy was they would also get a sample from the husband, and they said they were going to mix.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So either that is what Dr. K did, but because he had no access to medical residents and other physicians in a facility, he used himself, and then probably told my mother that he was mixing it with my dad's, and this was some new technology, and we could see if she'd get pregnant that way. So I'm hoping that was what it was.
Yeah.
The other possibility is he was very close to her family. He was at her house a lot. That there was an affair.
Yeah. Was he an obstetrician or just a general?
Oh no, he was what they used to call a GP.
Yeah.
General practitioner. It was even before there was. Now they don't even have those. You're an internist or a family practitioner or something like that. But no, he took care of everybody. He took care of my grandmother, took care of my dad, took care of my mom. She took care of her, obviously, her GYN stuff. He took care of me. So that's the one thing I grew up as an only child. I hated being an only child. I felt like a misfit anyway. I want so bad to find a half sib out there.
Yeah.
And I haven't found one yet.
Well,
so I'm on,
You have a few first
so.
cousins, though? Have you that you found?
I haven't found any first cousins.
Really?
I have only found, because that generation is gone.
Oh, because of how much older he was.
Yeah, because I'm 65. I'll be 65. So
okay.
Those people are like 90-something.
Yeah.
So no, I haven't found them.
Gotcha. What about your dad? A, have you talked to him? B, did he know about this?
No, he died. I didn't even touch this until he was already gone for 45 years.
Okay.
So he died, and he was 93 when he died in 2014. So no, I would never have said anything.
Yeah,
to him.
there really would be no need, would there?
No, and he loved Dr. King. He called him Doc, and he was there. He used to do work on his house. He used to he rebuilt his kitchen and did all these renovations for him. And on top of this, my mother did his books, Dr. K's books. I always thought that she saw him as a father figure because her father had abandoned the family when she was just a kid. And that was always my view of how he functioned in our family. I thought he should marry my grandmother.
Yes.
Except that he was married.
Right. Right. Well, you know what? In a perfect world, I would like to think that there was a discussion with both of your parents and of what he was going to do, and it was kind of the discussion stayed in that room, and it was what it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it would be nice to think that, but I don't think that.
You don't? Okay.
I mean, I don't think my father ever had a clue that I was not his biological daughter.
Okay, all right.
And if he ever did, he certainly didn't share it with his sisters.
Right. Okay.
My two old maid aunts.
Yeah. Although men don't. You know what I mean?
No.
I think that would be, for a lot of men, that would be questioning their masculinity, possibly. So they would rather just not just pretend it wasn't a thing. Who knows? We'll never know, will we?
We will never know. And it sort of bugs me that I'll never know what really happened.
Oh, yeah. I get that. Even though we have our story of our, who we are, we'll just never know exactly how it happened. I'm in the same situation, and I'm never going to know, obviously, unless I find a letter that somebody has kept hidden from me or something. But
that would be cool. I bet there are things like that somewhere. But my dad's moved too many times. Everything would be gone.
Well, I have letters that my father wrote to his father throughout around the time before and after the time that I was conceived. But there was a 6-month gap in the middle when I was conceived of the letters. So I don't know what, really, he just for 6 months didn't write to his dad. So I'm very curious as to whether there's a missing book or whether somebody just made a judgment call that this doesn't need to be, I don't know. Who knows what he would have told his father anyway. But cool story. I mean, a bummer that you'll never know. But yeah, it's weird. They're all weird, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They really are. I mean, I'm in the NP, NP friends and all those. crazy, crazy stories. And I think, my goodness, I knew the guy who turns out to be my father. I loved this guy. He was my uncle. He was a supporter of mine. He loved our family. I have all this stuff in my house that was his. I'm sitting here looking at this antique lamp, floor lamp that was in his office that he gave me when he retired. I have a set of Rosenthal china that he gave my mother.
So he definitely knew that you were his, I would say.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he did.
Yeah.
I think he knew. I don't think my dad knew. And, my mother was such a weird duck, but she really was. But she was very buttoned up and I don't know, kind of crazy. Yeah. But I can't, she's very prudish.
Yeah.
She didn't show her arms or anything. She was just she was really, really strict with me.
Wow.
She had lots and lots and lots of rules about how things are and should be and will be.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine her with him.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Oh man, to be a fly on the wall. These are times when I wish time travel were a thing.
Oh, yes.
Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall? I mean, not for everything, but you know what I mean.
I wish I knew. I just wish I knew what the circumstances were that caused this to happen. But, again, like I said, I think I came out pretty good compared to a lot of people as far as stories go, because I know who the guy was.
Yes.
I loved the guy. He loved me.
That's a gift, really.
Yeah. And that the only thing that ticks me off is he went to Tufts Medical School, and I did not get into Tufts when I applied for college. And if I'd known he was my father, he could have gotten me in.
Yeah. What's up with that? I wonder if he knew about
really?
that.
Damn it. I could have gone to Tufts. Oh, he knew where I was going. So he wrote my letters of recommendation.
Oh, he did? Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe,
Not for Tufts, apparently.
Okay. All right.
No, he wrote some letters of recommendation for me for scholarships in the town, is what he had done.
That's great. Well, wow. That's a really cool story, Sherry. Thanks for sharing it.
Thank you for listening.
Guys, if you would like to share your story as well, like Sherry, you know how to find me. I love sharing stories, and I really love talking to you guys. Sherry, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry.
Isn't she fun?
It's always fun to hear from a fellow New Englander.
Indeed. Yeah. Anyway,
I'm Richard Castle, and you folks can follow my doings on the Twitter.
Doings on the Twitter.
Doings, which is not much doing, but once in a while I'll tweet at Castle Songs, or you go to my website, richardcastle.com, where you can learn all sorts of things that you probably don't want to know about me, mostly about my music and my composing as a musical theater writer. So go ahead and consider following me there.
Consider it. Hey, I'm Julie Dixon Jackson. You can follow me on Twitter at Jules Jackson with 2 O's. Follow the CutOff Jeans podcast at CutOff Jeans Pod on Twitter. Join the Facebook group, CutOff Jeans Podcast. I'm going to ask you why you want to join and try to make it something that has to do with genealogy.
Something interesting so she knows you're not a bot.
Yes. Inside jokes are always appreciated. Always, always, always. You can also send me an email at julesjackson@cutoffjeans.com.
Or you could consider going to our Patreon page and supporting us there. All you have to do is go to patreon.com/Cutoff Jeans Podcast. We sure would appreciate it.
We would. And there's stuff there that only you can see if you're a patron.
I know. I want to become a patron just so I can see it.
Hey, guys, I have one more thing to tell you.
What is that, Julie?
The truth is in your jeans.